United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, what's up? My name is Noel, and what am I'm actually really genuinely considering getting a Vespa again or a moped because gas is damn near 5 whole doll hairs, bitch.
Yeah, it's having an EV is super nice. I'm Chelsea, and I want an e-bike, but one with a big basket so I can drive the dogs around.
Oh, that's a good idea too. I like the idea of an e-bike, but I love a little Vespa. My issue is that like people are reselling Vespas and mopeds that are like the cute metropolitan style that are like from 2013 for like $1,200, which is like
And e-bikes are more than that.
Yeah,
for sure. So
but
you'll get more bang for your buck with a
here's
Vespa.
the thing though, like Honda's brand new Metropolitans are like 2,300. So it's like,
Oh,
what are
save
we
two
doing?
paychecks and get a brand new
Yeah,
one.
that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. So, if you catch me riding dirty, you know why. Gas prices have never been this high in my lifetime. We did it. We did it. Yay, we did it.
Yeah, we're great.
So I'm so glad we made America great again. Anyway, speaking of colonizing countries, we're actually going to do a two-parter because there's a lot. And
Yeah,
you'll
Noah
learn.
went ham
There's a
on this
lot,
one.
okay? And I wanted to start off, the whole point of this episode was to talk about the Price sisters. But to understand the Price sisters, you have to zoom out, way out, and look at how nearly 800 years of colonization compressed itself into the lives of two women. Because this isn't just their story, it's the story of a system, one that over centuries dismantled Irish identity, restructured society, and replaced it with something designed to serve British rule, colonialism, and empire. And by the time Dolores and Marianne Price entered the picture, the system is no longer visible as something being built. It just feels like reality. So we're going into the time machine. And we're going back to, I technically think, one of Britain's first colonized countries. Okay.
Got it. I'm ready.
Historians usually look to the year 1169 as the starting point when Anglo-Norman lords crossed the Irish Sea after being invaded by a displaced king from Leinster. Ireland begins as a patchwork of Gaelic kingdoms governed under Brehon law, a sophisticated legal system where land isn't owned individually but held collectively through kinship ties. Chiefs are elected, women hold property rights, justice is restorative, not punitive. It's a world organized around clan loyalty, not centralized monarchy. Then, the crown's want for power and rule expands and systematically replaces that world entirely. Through plantations, beginning with Laois and Offaly in the 1550s, these are places in Ireland, culminating with Ulster in the 1600s, Irish land is confiscated by England on an industrial scale. But this isn't just theft, it's social engineering. Protestant settlers from England and Scotland are imported not just to farm, but to become the foundation of a new political order. They're given the best land, the walled towns, the strategic positions. The Irish are pushed to marginal land or removed entirely. And here's the critical detail. These settlers aren't just individuals seeking opportunity. They're colonists with a mission. They're Protestant in a Catholic land, English speaking in a Gaelic world. They represent civilization as the crown defines it, imposed on what they call barbarianism. And I want to really emphasize here is that this wasn't a single invasion where everything changed overnight. What Britain did in Ireland was a slow, methodical colonial project that unfolded over centuries. They had the advantage from the start: more advanced military technology, tighter organization, and a clear strategy. Instead of trying to take the entire island at once, they moved piece by piece. They'd conquer a region, fortify it, and then plant settlers there, people loyal to the crown, who were given control of the land. Meanwhile, resistance on the Irish side was often divided. Power was spread across different clans and kingdoms, and they didn't always act together. When larger unified rebellions did happen, they were met with overwhelming, violent force and brutally killed. Those crackdowns weren't just about winning in the moment, they were meant to send a message about what resistance would cost. As British control expanded, they didn't just take the land, they reshaped the entire system of governance. English courts and administrators replaced Irish ones. English law became the standard in controlled areas, and Irish legal traditions were simply declared invalid. The Brehons, the traditional Irish judges, were pushed out and replaced by English trained officials. And this is where the pressure became more than just military, it became economic. Under the new system, land ownership only really counted if it was recognized by English law. Irish nobles were put in an impossible position: either accept English titles and legal structures or risk losing their land altogether. The older clan-based system, where land was shared and managed collectively, couldn't compete with a system built on individual ownership backed up by the full military force of the crown. So even without an official war, the system itself started forcing people to bend the knee. That's a big part of why resistance struggled to succeed long term. Ireland wasn't unified at the beginning. There was a real technological gap in warfare. Economic pressure split the Irish elite, with some choosing survival within the new system over resistance. And every major rebellion that did rise up was met with such harsh suppression that it discouraged others from trying.
Well, and this is where you get like, have you ever heard, oh, I don't wear green on St. Patrick's Day, I wear orange?
I haven't.
That's well, a friend of the podcast, Ichabod, is an orange. The Cunninghams of his family lineage are orange Irish, where I would say I'm more green. Uh, Orange is what sided with the crown, and green is what stuck with like the more traditional Irish like roots. And then ultimately it became Protestant versus Catholic, whereas Protestant was the crown, obviously, and then Catholic was the traditional Irish. But that's a thing to this day. Like if people are like, I wear orange on St. Patrick's Day, you're like,
boo,
ooh,
tomato, tomato, tomato. We're throwing
yeah.
tomatoes.
You're like, okay, all right, I see you.
I would like to say that my dad got his dual citizenship in Ireland, and specifically the Republic of Ireland, bitch. So the real
That's so
Ireland.
sick.
And I said, thank fucking God, because like I don't pay attention to the genealogy like they have been recently.
Mhm.
Obviously, he had to prove that he could get a dual citizenship in Ireland. And there's that worry, there's that worry, just like any other white bitch in this fucking country that's like, what are we gonna find? Like, literally, I think an article just came out that like Paris Hilton's lineage were slave owners, obviously.
Yeah.
But guess whose lineage they had as slaves? Fucking Lizzo, bitch. Yeah. 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 So
Uncomfortable.
being a white bitch in the United States, it's always a little scary when you do genealogy. It's fucking terrifying. So
Oh yeah, you know what we all know what we're gonna find,
yeah, but I
unfortunately.
thankfully, shout out Ellis Island, shout out New York. Both sides of my family just came straight up off the boat and stayed there. So we know we're good, but the
Yeah,
unfortunate,
I think we came after my people because my dad is first gen.
yeah, we're
And
like
then
we're pretty fresh.
yeah, I wonder how much my Irish well, we can get into it. My mean grandma is Irish, but
Mm. Yeah,
I
you
don't want to.
should. But hey, you never know. Maybe just
Yeah,
take a
you
little
never know.
look. Take a little
I'll just
look.
get German. I wonder if I can get dual German citizenship. That'll make
Yeah,
me look really innocent.
yeah. They'll love it. They'll say, "Oh my God, she's coming
Yeah.
home." The blonde, blue eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God.
It's brutal. It's okay. We know for
Fun.
sure that Chelsea's dear grandma, rest in peace, a queen, was
Hmm.
Allied forces, okay? She was on the correct side of
Allied. Yep.
history, okay?
Yep.
She had actually been attacked by Nazis.
Yep.
So,
Just as fucked as the rest of us on the wrong side of the Berlin Wall.
as much as Chelsea might look like maybe half her family's in Argentina, it actually is not that the case. So,
Yeah.
shout out to being on the true Ireland Chucky Law. So,
Yeah.
anyway, all of this took place over hundreds of years, from roughly the 12th to the 17th century. And even though there was never-ending constant resistance for the native Irish, Britain's resources, strategy, and persistence gradually wore down and replaced Ireland's traditional politics and legal systems. So, let's get back to the timeline.
Yeah. So Irish traditional claims are no longer recognized, and their social structure becomes invisible to the state. And this matters because it means resistance isn't just against occupation, but it's also against a legal framework and power that denies Irish society ever existed. And religion reinforces every single level of this system. So after Henry VIII's break with Rome, Catholicism becomes not just heretical, but it also becomes treasonous. So to remain Catholic is to reject the crown's spiritual authority. So the Reformation in Ireland wasn't just theological, but it was also political. Protestant settlers become the foundation of loyalty, and Catholic Ireland becomes permanently suspect. And by the 1600s, under Cromwell, this suspicion hardens into policy. Because when Oliver Cromwell arrives in Ireland in 1649, the systematic nature of colonization becomes undeniable. His campaign isn't just military, but it's also demographic.
You got it.
Drogheda, these are
Yep.
Gaelic words, you guys, leave
Yep.
me alone. As Drogheda and Wexford, his forces massacre not just soldiers, but civilians, and priests are hunted down specifically. And the goal is terror and with a message that Catholic Ireland has no future. And the Act for Settlement of Ireland in 1652 makes this explicit. Catholics are moved west of the Shannon River to Connacht, the poorest province. So to hell or to Connacht, or as the saying goes. And the land in the fertile east and south goes to Cromwell's soldiers and Protestant settlers. And by the 1660s, Catholic land ownership falls from 59% to 22%. And even a generation after that, it goes all the way down to 14%. So they're fundamentally replacing Native Irish. It's just weird to see the Catholics, you know what I mean? It's
I
like, no,
know.
the poor Catholics here.
I will. It's hard to say the poor Catholics, but
Yeah.
the part that I didn't want to go into because I was already at 14 pages of notes was like how Ireland became Catholic, majority Catholic. That's a whole other fucking,
Yeah.
that is a
Yeah.
whole
Because
other journey down memory lane.
we've done a fairy possession episode
Hmm.
where even getting treatment for the woman who was possessed by the fae and changelings was scary because a lot of the people were like, fuck, we gotta like treat this woman while also keeping it under wraps. But that's an old cut. Good luck finding it.
Yeah, good luck
Um,
finding the ancient
yeah.
texts, but I think we can definitely come back to how Ireland becomes Catholic and loses its not loses, but a version of religious colonization comes through and
Oh yeah.
takes away some of the more like I don't want to say theatrical, but like the fun, spiritual,
Well,
more
missionary work is the enemy of culture. So
absolutely.
I guess Ireland's native culture
Hmm.
was destroyed by
Yeah.
Catholicism. But at this point, we're
It's
seeing it
it's
get got
yeah,
by its
yeah.
own foundations of got getting.
Yep. Yep, exactly. It's like
So yeah.
just to try to understand like 600 to 800 years of history into what makes Ireland what it is today, we have to skip and jump past how Ireland loses its original native religious and
Mhm.
spiritual ties and just
Yeah.
start with Ireland now identifies as majority Catholic. Okay, let's go.
Yeah. So when Catholic King James II tries to reclaim his throne, he doesn't do it from England, but instead goes through Ireland. And he uses it as a base to fight back against the Protestant King William III. And that's when this stops being a dynastic struggle but it then becomes something more existential. Here we get the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, which effectively decides who sits on the throne and then some, because it also decides the direction of Ireland for centuries to come. And William's victory, plot twist over James, wasn't just a military win over him, but it subsequently locked in Protestant rule as a permanent power structure in Ireland. Then comes the Treaty of Limerick in 1691. On paper, it promises Catholics religious freedom and the right to keep their land. It looks more like a moment of compromise or even restraint, but obviously that doesn't hold because the Irish Parliament is now entirely Protestant. And almost immediately, those guarantees start to erode, whereas they are ignored, rewritten, or quietly dismantled. And what replaces them isn't just chaos, but it's the construction of a legal framework designed not only to control, but also to systemically strip power, land, and identity from the Catholic Irish population.
Between 1695 and 1728, the Irish Parliament passes what becomes known as the Penal Laws, a comprehensive system designed to eliminate Irish Catholic political, economical, and social power. Irish Catholics can't vote. They can't sit in Parliament. They can't hold any government office. They can't serve as judges, lawyers, or armed officers. And beyond that, they were barred from joining merchant guilds or professional organizations, limiting economic mobility. Irish Catholics can't buy land. They can't inherit land from Protestants. And when an Irish Catholic dies, his estate must be divided equally among his sons. I want to pause here because you think like, oh, that's nice. No, they're doing it to
No.
fucking fragment the land.
Yeah.
And then the caveat, unless one of his sons converts to Protestantism, in which case, guess what? He inherits all of it, everything. And Irish Catholics can't own horses worth more than €5, which I'm going to go ahead and guess all of them were. So, and they can't carry weapons. Interfaith marriages were legally disadvantaged, and Catholic estates were frequently manipulated through Protestant-controlled inheritance rules to prevent the accumulation of wealth. They couldn't receive education abroad, and guess what? They couldn't get it at home. English Protestant militias were often empowered by the crown to patrol Catholic areas and enforce discriminatory laws, reinforcing the idea that Catholics were second-class citizens. Irish Catholics were often prevented from trading freely or opening businesses in towns dominated by Protestant guilds. Think of that as like unions, I guess, but evil version.
Mm-hmm.
Trade restrictions, tariffs, and monopolies favored Protestant settlers and absentee landlords. The penal laws didn't just target property or political power, they restricted education, religious expression, and the ability to maintain Irish cultural institutions. This reinforced the social hierarchy by erasing the language, customs, and cultural identity of the majority population.
Enter sinners.
Straight up.
Just a little throwback to why there would be an Irishman in there so pissed. There you go.
Edmund Burke himself, a Protestant, calls this code a machine of wise and elaborate contrivance, as well fitted for the oppression, impoverishment, and degradation of people and the debasement in them of human nature itself, as ever proceeded from the perverted ingenuity of man. Basically, he's saying this is fucking evil. By the 1700s, most Irish Catholics have been reduced to tenant farmers on increasingly smaller plots. The good land, the fertile, profitable land, belongs to English Protestant landlord class. Many of them, just like a landlord, many of them don't even live in Ireland. They live in England and treat Ireland as a source of income, nothing more. Rents are extracted, not reinvested. Irish Catholic families are left trying to survive on whatever land remains, and even that land doesn't stay whole for long. With each generation, it's subdivided. A farm that could once support a single family is split between sons, then split between grandsons, and what you end up with are tiny fragmented plots barely enough to live on. And you know what I'm thinking here? Catholics, similar to Mormons, want you to have big families. So they they do this because they know as a practicing Catholic, you're probably going to have like a few kids. So you're going to have to divide your land versus like if you just had one kid, it's not like going to be as quick of a generational breakdown. But because they know you're Catholic, they know you're probably going to have a few.
It's a way for them to like keep a boot on your neck and be like, hey, if you want to have all these children, you're going to have to divide up your land. Whereas if you want to set yourself up or set your children up, you're going to have to go against the religious belief of procreation.
Yeah,
So pick one.
and then half of these motherfuckers die by 10.
Yeah.
So it's like you go, okay, we'll just have one kid, and then they die, and then you go, oh, there goes our lineage, and
And
then
I'm only living till I'm fucking 30, so I've
yeah,
just blown past my fertile window.
and then your fucking land just goes right to the crown.
Yeah.
So survival becomes a question. What can you grow in a space this small on soil this poor and still feed a family? And that's where the potato comes in. The potato
Hell yeah,
isn't
my guy.
the OG.
Favorite food.
The
French
potato
fries.
isn't native to Ireland. It comes from the Andes in South America, first cultivated by indigenous people thousands of years earlier. It's brought to Europe in the 1500s by Spanish colonizers, and over time it spreads across the continent. Spoiler alert, how do you think the native religion died? Anyway, but in most of Europe, it's just one crop among many. In Ireland, it becomes something else entirely because potatoes have a unique advantage. They can produce a huge number of calories in a very small space. They grow very well in poor rocky soil, and they can sustain a family on land that would be useless for grain. For landlords, this is convenient. It means tenants can survive barely on smaller and smaller plots, while the best land is reserved for export crops like wheat and cattle. For the Irish poor, it becomes a lifeline.
And by the late 1700s and early 1800s, millions of people are surviving almost entirely on potatoes. Whereas that would be my dream, I can see how it would become a nightmare. Not because they want to, but because English colonizer landlords, backed by the crown, leave them no other choice. So the entire population becomes dependent on a single crop, and that kind of dependence is fragile. Because in 1845, a fungal disease, Phytophthora sweeps across Ireland and destroys the potato crop. And for most of the population, this is immediately catastrophic because the potato isn't just a staple, but it's survival. And for millions of people in Ireland, it provides up to 80% of their daily calories. So when it fails, there's no backup, no second crop, no savings, and no margin for error because all the other crops are getting exported.
Yep.
They can't even eat the food that they're growing on their own fucking soil.
Yep.
And all the food that they're producing is stuff like grain, beef, butter, livestock, enough food to literally feed the starving population more than once over. And all of it is grown on large, fertile estates owned by Anglo-Irish and English landlords. And none of that food stays in Ireland. And it is exported under armed guard. And so, how does that happen? Because the system never changed. Land is still concentrated in the hands of landlords, many of them absentee, whose priority is profit. Tenant farmers don't own any of the land they work. They owe rent, and whether the potato crop succeeds or fails, if they can't pay, they're evicted. That's the same fucking thing we're doing to NAFTA in South America, and then we wonder why people are immigrating here where they can make a living and not have their family fucking starve to death.
Mm-hmm.
So even during famine, tenants are forced by violence to sell whatever they can produce or be removed from the land entirely. Meanwhile, landlords continue exporting food to English markets where the prices are stable and profits are higher. And at the same time, the British government largely adheres to a laissez-faire ideology that the market shouldn't be interfered with or even in crisis because capitalism is self-sustaining.
Yeah.
So exports are not stopped and food is not systematically redistributed. I mean, it exists, but access to it is controlled and it belongs to the landlords, and the landlords are selling to the highest bidder, which is England. And when people try to intervene, like i.e., stopping shipments or trying to reclaim food, British troops are there to protect the convoys and fucking kill the starving population.
Yep.
And that's the key difference. People aren't starving because there's no food. They're starving because the crown and their fucking landlords determine who is allowed to eat. And they decided to just let the Irish die.
The British government's response reveals the moral framework underlying colonialism. Charles Trevelyan, maybe, the civil servant overseeing famine relief, calls it a direct stroke of an all-wise and all-merciful providence designed to teach the Irish self-resilience. Actually, you know what? I'm so glad I can't fucking pronounce his name. Fuck that bitch. Prime Minister Lord Russell refuses to interfere with market forces. The government fears that effective relief would create dependency. What a fucking joke. Workhouses are deliberately harsh, families are separated, conditions are brutal to discourage people from seeking help. Public works projects pay starvation wages for backbreaking labor, often building roads that lead nowhere. Over 7 years, 1 million people die, another million immigrate, and Ireland's population drops from 8 million to 6 million. Entire communities disappear. The famine wasn't a natural disaster, it was a policy choice. British officials had multiple options. Ban food exports, rejected. Open ports to American corn ships, delayed. Provide adequate relief, refused. And distribute available food, never even fucking considered. Instead, they maintained that market forces and private property were sacred, even as people starved besides the exported grain. Pair that with the penal laws, and let's not call this a famine. Let's call it what it really is, a genocide. For Irish people, the famine proved that British rule meant death, not metaphorical death, literal death. Your family could die of hunger while British soldiers protected food shipments leaving your country. This wasn't policy failure, it was a system worked as designed. Survivors carry this knowledge to America, Australia, and Canada. Irish communities worldwide become centers of anti-British sentiment. Money flows back to Ireland to fund nationalist movements. The global Irish diaspora? I can't
I
remember
don't
how
know
to
why I always
pronounce it.
struggle with that one.
I know.
I've educated myself 100 fucking times on how to pronounce
Diaspora.
that.
Diaspora. There
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Diaspora. The global Irish diaspora becomes Britain's persistent and righteous enemy. The 1880s bring a different strategy, mass organization plus parliamentary pressure. Charles Stewart Parnell leads the Irish Parliamentary Party while the Land League organizes tenant farmers. The tactic, make Ireland ungovernable until Britain grants concessions. Landlords who evict tenants face social ostracism. People don't buy their shit, they'd rather starve. People don't interact with them, they are invisible. Captain Charles Boycott gives his name to the strategy. I was fucking gagged.
I'm gooped. I did not know that.
I was like, no fucking way.
Fucking boycott?
Yes. Yeah. The term boycott comes from an Irish resistance captain who came up with the theory and practice, and it's named after him. So fucking iconic, dude. And it makes total sense how like this timeless, unfortunately that it has to be this way, this like timeless beacon of what resistance looks like and what true activism looks like coming from the country of Ireland, the people of Ireland, right? Throughout time, unfortunately, it has been like this who you look to see what liberation and the fight for independence looks like tirelessly. And one of the biggest, like both then and modern tactics, boycotting, right? Comes directly from them, from a fucking guy, that's his fucking name, who's like, hey, why don't we just tell them to fuck themselves? Like it's so unbelievably iconic. It's also just another reason why history is so important to dig into and learn yourselves, because I was never fucking taught this. I never fucking knew this. I never knew any of this.
Yeah, I knew that. I knew the potato famine kind of, but I didn't like understand that people were they were exporting food.
Yeah,
they make it seem like, oh yeah, that there was a big famine and all they had were potatoes, and then the potatoes went bad, and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And it's like, oh, we were systematically starving people to death. I'm reading Children of Dune right now, and one of the quotes that Muad'Dib said is that when I am weaker than you, I ask you for freedom because that is according to your principles. When I am stronger than you, I take away your freedom because that is according to my principles. We fucking see it time and time again. Time and time again.
It's dark and evil.
Yep. So by the 1860s, the Fenian Brotherhood, an Irish-American revolutionary organization, embraced armed rebellion against the crown. Love to see it. At the same time, in Ireland, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, the IRB, a secret oath-bound society founded in Dublin in 1858 by James Stephens, organized a clandestine Republican network committed to overthrowing the British rule by force if necessary.
Also,
Also
when
love
they
to see
mean
it.
like when they say Republican in the sense of Irish, that's like left leaning. Just want to say that there.
Yeah. We're not co-signing with
No, it's
Republicans.
not
That's embarrassing.
Republican as like the
It's a
sense that we
republic.
know it. Yeah.
Yes. So, structured in small, compartmentalized cells, the IRB recruited veterans, artisans, smallholders, and nationalists, and ran a propaganda press, the Irish People, and coordinated with the Fenian Brotherhood in the United States for money, arms, and men. At the same time, women were organizing too, but their role was kind of contested from the start. When the Cumann Numan
hmm
formed in 1914, it wasn't inevitable that they would be a separate auxiliary group. Some women had pushed to be fully integrated into the volunteers, even at leadership levels. But male leaders like Patrick Pearse sent mixed signals, even saying things like they can help with first aid, maybe start a little group, but I don't like the idea of women in arms. So he was supporting women's involvement in things like medical work while resisting the idea of them acting as full military participants. But the result was a compromise, a separate organization that supported rather than led. But even at its founding, tensions were clear. The leadership was largely middle class, and the group positioned itself as politically neutral to appeal across nationalist factions. And figures like Hannah She Skeffington warned that women risked being reduced to subordinate roles. So, from the beginning, the Cumann Noman existed in a contradiction, essential to the movement, but never fully equal within it. And that same tension between ambition and limitation was already baked into the broader Irish revolutionary movement. The IRB, for example, had attempted to turn theory into action with the 1867 Fenian Rising, and it was poorly armed, quickly suppressed, and widely seen as a failure. But the organization itself survived waves of arrests and infiltration, continuing on as a secret underground network. Its methods being secrecy, international links, targeted violence, and intelligence work.
Alongside political resistance comes cultural nationalism. The Gaelic Athletic Association in 1884 promotes Irish sports. The Gaelic League in 1893 revives Irish language. Irish literature and music celebrate pre-colonial culture, and the message is Ireland isn't just politically distinct, it's culturally different from Britain. By 1914, Ireland seemed on the brink of self-government. The Home Rule Act, which would create an Irish parliament within the UK, had passed, but Protestant Ulster threatened armed resistance, and the outbreak of World War I delayed its implementation. When war came, Irish nationalism split. Some supported Britain, hoping loyalty would secure home rule. Others opposed Britain and pushed for full independence. Then came the Easter Rising. Roughly 1,000 rebels, mainly Irish volunteers, members of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and a small number of Irish citizens, army fighters, and women of the Cumann against the British Empire. It lasted 6 days and ended with the leader's execution. At first, many Dubliners viewed the rising as foolish, tiny, poorly armed, and crowds even booed the activists when they surrendered, seeing them as reckless or naive. But the British response changed everything. The British executed 15 leaders in quick succession, many within days of brief, seemingly fake military trials. It was brutal and disproportionate to most Irish people. James Connolly was badly wounded and had to be strapped to a chair to be shot. That image of a suffering man executed for daring to fight inspired outrage. Instead of cowing the population, the executions created heroes. People began to see the rebels as people who had sacrificed everything for Irish freedom, not as failed insurgents. The executions helped shift public sympathy away from moderate home rule supporters towards those demanding full independence. Support for groups like the Sinn Féin surged, setting the stage for Irish War of Independence in 1990. 1919, Jesus, not 1990, 1919. Michael Collins, an IRB leader, pioneered a new kind of guerrilla warfare that would go on to influence liberation movements around the world. Instead of fighting the British in open battle, which Ireland would almost certainly lose, Collins reorganized the fight into small mobile units that could strike quickly and disappear. These units carried out ambushes, sabotage, and targeted attacks on British infrastructure. But what really set Collins apart was his intelligence work. He built a system of spies inside the British administration. Clerks, police, even informants within Dublin Castle itself, who fed him information about raids, arrests, and undercover agents. Using that intelligence, the IRB, which would become the IRA, could act first, avoiding capture and eliminating key targets. One of the most famous examples was Bloody Sunday in 1920, when Collins's network identified and coordinated the assassination of multiple British intelligence officers in a single morning. At the same time, this wasn't just a military campaign. It was also a political one. The IRB/IRA relied heavily on support from the Irish population, especially in rural areas, for shelter, information, and protection. And internationally, Irish leaders worked to frame the conflict as a fight for national liberation, gaining sympathy, especially in the United States. So Collins wasn't just fighting a war, he was reshaping how that war was fought through intelligence, mobility, and public support rather than traditional battlefield confrontation. These tactics made British rule both costly and humiliating. By 1921, the pressure was too great. Britain finally agreed to come to the negotiating table. Britain's solution was to divide Ireland. The 6 Protestant majority counties of Ulster would remain part of the United Kingdom, while the remaining 26 counties would become the Irish Free State. Ulster Protestants had long threatened civil war over home rule. They saw themselves as British, not Irish, and feared being ruled by a Catholic majority. Partition allowed them to stay in the UK while giving the rest of Ireland self-government. For Irish nationalists, this was a bitter, stupid compromise. They wanted a united Ireland. Ulster Unionists, meanwhile, wanted the entire island to remain British. The result was that Catholics in Northern Ireland became a permanent minority in a Protestant state, laying the foundation for decades of tension. The Anglo-Irish Treaty that created the Free State split the Irish independence movement. By this point, the struggle itself had already evolved. The Irish Republican Brotherhood, the IRB, a secret revolutionary network founded in 1858, had spent decades organizing in the shadows. In 1913, the Irish Volunteers emerged as a public militia, many of them quietly led by IRB members. After the Easter Rising and into the War of Independence, those volunteers increasingly became known as the Irish Republican Army, the IRA, the armed force fighting for an independent Irish republic. Out of that war came 2 very different visions of what victory should look like. Michael Collins, a OG member of the IRB, now one of the IRA's most important leaders, and architect of the guerrilla warfare strategy and intelligence network, accepted the treaty as a pragmatic step, calling it freedom to achieve freedom. It gave Ireland real autonomy, and he believed it could be built into a full independence over time. But what is this?
Dave Valera.
Dave Valera, Amon de Valera, a leading political figure of the Revolutionary Republic and a veteran of the 1916 Rising, saw it very differently. To him and his supporters, the treaty was a betrayal. It kept ties to the British crown, requiring an oath of allegiance, and accepted the partition of Ireland, abandoning the republic they believed had already been declared. A civil war was to follow, and it was devastating. Pro-treaty forces ultimately won, but the cost was enormous. More Irish people died fighting each other than had died fighting the British. Families were torn apart along political lines, sometimes for generations, and the new state was born amid internal violence. Collins himself was assassinated in 1922, and though, Dave Valera? Dave Valera's Republicans were defeated, they were far from reconciled. In the North, the sectarian nature of the new state was made explicit by its first Prime Minister, James Craig. Catholics faced systematic discrimination. Gerrymandering electoral boundaries ensured English Protestant political control. Jobs in government industry were given to English Protestants first. Housing allocation favored Protestant families, and the police force, the RUC, was overwhelmingly Protestant. The result was a, quote, democracy in which 1/3 of the population was effectively excluded from meaningful political and economic participation. The Free Irish State, later the Republic of Ireland, shot out, gradually gained real independence, but it came slowly and cautiously. By 1931, it achieved full legislative autonomy, and in 1949, it formally declared itself a republic, leaving the Commonwealth. Yet, political independence did not bring social revolution. The Catholic Church dominated education and social policy. The economy remained largely agricultural and underdeveloped, and immigration continued as people left in search of opportunity. Meanwhile, partition hardened into permanence as both the North and South developed separate institutions, identities, and paths. By the 1960s, Northern Ireland's Catholic population began demanding basic rights: one person, one vote in local elections, fair housing allocation, equal job opportunities, and reform of police force. The Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association, inspired by the American Civil Rights Movement, organized peaceful protests demanding fair treatment for the Catholic minority. These efforts faced violent resistance from English Protestant loyalists and counter-demonstrators, and an overwhelmingly Protestant police force. One particularly controversial policy, internment without trial, allowed authorities to arrest suspected Republicans or paramilitaries without charges or court proceedings. In practice, it almost exclusively targeted Irish Catholics, while English loyalist paramilitaries were rarely arrested, fueling anger and increasing support for the IRA. On January 30th, 1972, what would become known as Bloody Sunday, a civil rights march in Derry, Northern Ireland, protesting this policy. The march itself was meant to be peaceful, but as it moved through the city, British soldiers from the Parachute Regiment were deployed to control the crowd. What happened next is still one of the most infamous moments of the conflict. The soldiers opened fire on unarmed civilians. 14 people were killed, and many of them were wounded. Victims were shot while fleeing, while helping the injured, or simply standing in the crowd. None of those killed were armed. In the immediate aftermath, the British government claimed the soldiers had been fired upon first, that they were never heard that before.
Yeah. Where were they? Where were the guns then? If they didn't find any on the people they shot.
Fairy magic, I assume.
Yeah.
That they were responding to gunmen and bomb threats. But for the Catholic community in Northern Ireland and for many watching internationally, this explanation rang hollow. To them, it looked like the state had opened fire on its own citizens for protesting. Bloody Sunday became a turning point. For many Irish Catholics, it shattered any remaining belief that peaceful protest and civil rights activism would lead to meaningful change. If marching for basic human rights could end in mass killings, then the system itself is deemed beyond reform. In the months that followed, support for the IRA, particularly the Provisional IRA, surged, recruitment increased, and the conflict escalated dramatically. This is where we're going to stop because we're going to pick back up and get to know the IRA and the Provisional IRA very intimately. We're going to go over what they did and what led to a period of time called the Troubles and what would then lay the fertile ground for the Price sisters. So we will talk about that next week, but I am absolutely gooped, as always, by learning the true history of anything. I think like also when they talk about like let's keep it a buck. When they talk about the Irish in the United States helping with money, that was the mob, mama. That was Irish mob, baby. That's what that was. But you know, hey, so
I learned something recently from Sinners, and that was the Choctaw during the you know how in the very beginning of Sinners you see Indigenous Americans, and it's the Choctaw tribe. When the potato famine was happening, the Choctaw had actually sent some money to Ireland, I think, despite being victims of their own their what the fuck am I trying to say? Colonization, yeah. So yeah, here we go. The real Choctaw sent money to the starving Irish during the English-induced famine of the 1840s while they themselves were experiencing genocide. So given that the idea of the Choctaw being historical allies of the Irish, by identifying Remick for not who he seems, they highlight that he does not represent the Irish spirit of resistance. Instead, he represents the spirit of oppression, and his choice of music underscores this. So that's why the Choctaw were realizing they're like, we know Irish is friends, and you're not that it. So that's another layer in Sinners that makes it so fucking good.
So cool. God, Sinners an absolute masterclass in storytelling and integrating historical context into something that is so digestible to the masses. I
Hmm.
got to have a conversation with some coworkers, and I was like, right after the award ceremony, right when Sinners had almost a full sweep, and I was like, if you think that Sinners is just a movie about vampires, you're not watching it right.
Yeah.
And we got into like a bit of a conversation about the different like historical points and messaging that they were portraying in that movie, that Ryan Coogler's portraying in that movie, and they were like, "Oh shit!" And then one of them actually, God, I'm blanking on the name of it. I have it saved somewhere, but recommended this book that he read, which is the POV of an Irish, female Irish immigrant to Brooklyn, like the slums in Brooklyn,
Hmm.
and it goes over the like tenement conditions and shit like that. Very interesting. Um, but yeah, I will say that wanting to dig into the history of the IRA is what got me. Well, I should say, watching Sinners almost have a sweep during award season is what made me go, I want to learn more about what the colonization of Ireland, which then made me go, I want to learn more about the IRA, which then made me go, wait, who the fuck are these two divas? So that's how
Yeah.
we got here. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, I intended to just talk about the Price sisters, but when you talk about people in history that have what some might look on the outside in as like a fully tattered past or like wrong position or violent or whatever the fuck you want to call it, like radical,
Hmm.
it's important, I think, to paint the picture of full context and full historical context and understand where they came from, what they were living in, and the culminating circumstances that had been compounding over hundreds of years to get them in the to the position they were in. I
Yeah.
think that those things are often left out of conversations, and it's how history likes to make villains out of revolutionaries, as
Yep.
we see here in the United States. Every single um, revolutionary in any other fucking country has always been kicked down, or at least has the United States has attempted to kick down and put their fucking boot on their neck. And then when you actually sit and take a minute to look at their history and what they were doing for their people and what their goals were and get the whole scope from their side and not just an imperialistic side, you start to see that they actually aren't a villain. And that they're just an activist in their own right, fighting for independence of their native people and country. So that is why we are doing a two-parter. That is why we are learning about the Britain's colonization of Ireland and what led to the formation of the IRA. So excited to dig more into it. And yeah,
Yeah. Good job.
that's
This was a fun one. I'm excited for part two.
yeah, I'm excited as well. It's it's going to be interesting. Do you remember what they're calling? Because like they're not calling Irish car bombs anymore, like the shot. Do you remember what they're calling them now? Will you look it up?
Is
I'm
it just like a Jaeger bomb now?
no, no, no. I don't think so. No, I
No,
think
that
they're
just sounds
different.
bad now. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do car bomb. I'm just so used to like fucking, what do they call them now? I'm Googling it. That was a
Yeah.
Freudian slip, and I'm trying to educate me. Irish slammer
Irish Slammer is what they're
or a
calling them now.
Dublin drop.
Okay. Okay, let's all keep that in our back pockets. I don't know, or maybe not. Or maybe we'll be like, hey, I don't know. I have to learn more about the IRA and what was going on with the provisional IRA. We've got to really get in the weeds before we can decide if we
I
need to change
know.
the name
If
of
I
that.
just misspoke, I'm very sorry, but at
This
least
is
it's just the Irish that'll be mad at me.
you don't
But then
want
what's a
them.
Jaeger bomb?
That is Red Bull and Jägermeister. Yeah.
Learning something new every day.
Yeah. So you live and you learn, baby. But I also want to say there is such a movement and resurgence again around restoring Irish culture, native Irish culture. Um, Gaelic, I know that's not how you actually pronounce it. There's a more beautiful, correct way to pronounce it, but Gaelic as a language, despite all of the native Irish's best efforts, was on the verge of extinction. And one of the
Hmm.
biggest pieces of feedback that the native people have was that there was, despite being in the modern time, even like literally within the last 10 to 20 years, they were like, hey, we need to do something about this or this language is going to go extinct. And the
Yeah.
government did absolutely nothing to intervene, not even in a historical conservation context. They just didn't give a fuck. And it has been individuals um, within the country there trying to preserve it because right now Ireland is in a big upswing. There's parts of the country that are getting a fair amount of money because of tourism, and there should be no fucking reason why they don't put resources into, um, saving language, saving culture, saving art,
Yeah.
preventing it from going extinct. We should never allow anything to go extinct culturally or with language or with animals. Like we just should not allow that. It's such a misstep of the responsibility that we have as humans on Earth. So it's all of these individuals who are doing it. They're creating full immersion schools where they only speak Gaelic, and
It's on
parents
Duolingo now.
straight up is on Duolingo. Even parents who don't speak it are putting their kids in the full immersion school. And
Hmm.
I would be fucking remiss to say that there has been such a worldwide eyes drawn to the Gaelic language, to the group Kneecap, which is a Irish-based rap group with three guys from Ireland who speak Gaelic. They're fantastic. They have been in the news for speaking out against the genocide of the Palestinian people because every native Irish person sees themselves in the Palestinian people. They know exactly what it's like to have um,
Hmm.
to be attempted to be genocided by a fucking imperialist psychopath. They fucking know it. The independence of Ireland and a unified Ireland is the independence of the Palestinian people in a unified Palestine. And they have been so vocal about that and bringing such global attention to it. Even Mochara, which means my friend in Gaelic, one of the main guys in Kneecap, was charged by um, the crown for fucking terrorism, all because he said, like, fucking Netanyahu and the IDF are committing a genocide. And thankfully,
Yeah,
he did
dude.
win. Like, it was dismissed recently, I think within the last 30 days. Um, and he just immediately after the trial ended, he never stopped talking about it. And then immediately after the trial ended, he made this beautiful statement. And I recommend everyone to go watch it and listen to it. And him and all of Kneecap went to Cuba most recently to bring supplies and food and solar panels because the United States' imperialist fucking boot is trying to crush the civilian population of Cuba and punish them and fucking starve them. And they fucking went there and it's absolutely incredible that the spirit of the Irish people, which is this the resistance to colonization from its inception, the resistance to colonization, this tireless, nonstop effort to maintain the culture and maintain the native population and to fight against it no matter what the odds look like, no matter how it's stacked against you. When they were fucking these Gaelic kingdoms fighting against the full British military, they never fucking gave up. And that spirit has just nonstop throughout decades in time and is still there to this day and is now being used to not only still say, our time will come, Shakia the United Ireland will be one day, but to also say this is not a one-off case. Genocide is still happening in the world in current day, and we need to pay attention to it. We could do something about it. And I think it's one of the most inspiring things in the whole entire fucking world. So shout out to Kneecap and shout out to every Irish native throughout history and time who has looked at the odds stacked against them and said, fuck you, motherfucker. So
Yeah, hell yeah.
shout out. Big shout out. I don't want to say excited because I know that talking about the IRA is a controversial topic, but I'm interested. I'm interested with a big emphasis and effort to learn more about what was going on then. So,
Yeah, same Zays.
yay! Speaking of things that are going on, I am at Noel Fain. That is at Sithlard. We are at Go to Hell Podcast. And you can find us on Instagram with those bios or honestly anywhere, but that's really where we are. I'm trying not to be on Facebook unless you're on Patreon and you know why I'm still on Facebook, but that's where Chelsea lives. So if you want to talk to her there, you can. But on our Instagram specifically, in our bios, we have a link, and that link is to a link tree, and that link tree will link out to our Patreon. $1 gets you in. Don't say anything to anyone, you guys. I let you in on
Secret.
some deep lore, and you better shut the fuck up, okay? You better shut the fuck
Mhm.
up and remember that you signed a contract and you paid $1, so that means you can't tell anyone anything and it stays behind closed doors. We also have a link to our merch where 100% of proceeds are donated. And speaking of Palestine, Chelsea made a super awesome free Palestine merch. And we'll, as always, if you want to donate directly to a Palestinian organization, a nonprofit, show us the proof of it, and we'll just send you the art so you can make whatever you want with it and print it on your
For
own food.
free.
Are you talking, Chelsea? I can't hear you.
Yeah, am I muted?
Wait, say it again.
Am I muted?
There we
I'm
go.
not muted.
Maybe it was me.
Maybe it
Maybe
was
it was
you.
me.
I
Maybe
was
it was
just
me.
saying for free. Maybe I said it too high. For free.
Maybe. There we go. So that's there. And in that merch store, you can also find merch made for us by Kelly Holloran or at Wildwood Owl on Etsy. She makes cool shit for us. She makes cool shit in general. Go check her out. We also have a link to mutual aid across the United States, and we have a link to our YouTube where you can listen to us on YouTube. We don't post videos. I don't know why you would do that, but whatever, it's fine. You can place in the comments. And I'm not ready to ever post a video. I'll be so honest for you. I don't know if I'll ever be there. It's like this is my safe space. We record video. What's so funny is that we record video.
We do. We have video for
We have
every
video for
single
every
thing.
single thing, but it is deleted. It is deleted at the end of
Scrubbed from the
recording.
internet.
We say absolutely
I don't
fucking not.
I don't need people to see that my thumb goes directly in, or my head.
Freudian
That was
slip.
a Freudian slip, my thumb head. I don't need people to see that my chin goes directly into my fucking neckline, all right?
Yeah, I don't need people to see what me unshowered for 3 days looks like because that's what this
Yeah.
fucking hair is. You guys don't need to see it. I don't know. Maybe, it's just like not in the cards. Maybe one day. Maybe we'll do it one day. Maybe we'll have fun with it. Maybe we'll do like a freestyle episode where we could just have fun and talk shit so we
Yeah.
can be focused on our posture. Because that's the other thing. It's like when we're doing episodes, I'm too busy like reviewing the notes and trying not to like sound illiterate and remember to sound out words in my head
Yeah.
sometimes. Like I'm so busy focused on that what you would see is like the
Yeah.
like thumbtanic mans from
You'd
like
see my ear as I'm
yeah.
like leaned in
It
trying to
would be
read.
really fucked up and not cute. So maybe if like we're in a position where we don't have to like lock in, when we could like focus
Yeah.
on like, oh, remember to, like stand up straight, remember to, like take your chin and push it out and not like push it in and show
Yeah.
double chin. Like maybe that would be the case, but
Maybe
not anytime
someday.
soon. But the last thing you can find in that link tree in our bio is a link to listen to us, which I don't know why you'd need it, but it's anywhere podcasts are heard. So I basically already said it, but I'm gonna go ahead and give a big, massive fucking hail, the world's biggest hail, the biggest Chalkia law to the boys of Kneecap and all of history's Irish revolutionaries throughout time and current day.
Man, I gotta just say hell French fries because I'm still thinking of all those delicious potatoes.
And you know what? That's so real.
It's really insensitive, but that's the only thing in
That's
my
so
mind right
real.
now.
Almost as
So
insensitive as you saying that the biggest change in your life was the drowning of a Glee star and
yeah, well, it fucked with me pretty good.
and that's your truth, and that's your truth, and we have to respect
yeah,
it.
I told the truth on that.
So did I.
So
But
sorry.
well, with that, let's get the fuck out of here.
All right, bye.
Bye.